It is April the 26th, 3 o'clock p.m. The monthly Board of Commissioner meeting is hereby open. Call to order with the roll call.
Oops, that's me. Chairman Lewis,
Present.
Vice Chair Rose,
Here.
Commissioner Walker, Commissioner Henry,
Here.
Commissioner Adair, Commissioner Turnbull,
Here.
Commissioner Chenoweth.
Here.
Prior to requesting an approval of the agenda, this time we would like to welcome Commissioner Danielle as a full-fledged board member on April the 26th, which was after our board member of April the 23rd. We received communication from the HUD Washington office to allow her to be a full-fledged board member, retroactive to April the 20th. And for that,
Correct,
March, I'm sorry, March the 20th. And for that reason, we have placed the old resolutions back on this agenda for ratification. At this time, I would like to entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Chairman Lewis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rose,
Yes.
Commissioner Walker, whoops, Commissioner Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Turnbull, Commissioner Chenoweth.
Yes.
Next, we have public comment on agenda items only. Do we have any public comment on agenda items only?
Kathy.
That's okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll share. Hi, Carrie Wyman, City of Champaign Neighborhood Services Director. Later on today, you'll be talking about Bristol Place, and I first just wanted to thank the board for your continued partnership. We've been working together with you since 2012. I know we've had a lot of transition on our side and on your side, so I just thank you for your support as we move forward. We're getting very close, obviously, to the construction of the new site, and that would not be possible without the partnership with the Housing Authority. Just as a reminder, in our first intergovernmental agreement, I know later on you're going to discuss the amended intergovernmental agreement, but you offered to contribute up to $1,092,000 either in vouchers and or cash. The projected project was just over $7 million at that time. Because it came in under budget, we cost shared. We shared those project savings with you, so your end contribution between vouchers and cash was just a little over $1 million. And then moving forward, both the city and the Housing Authority in partnership with the developer are looking for the new site. And so just wanted to say thank you before you vote later, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Our goal from the very beginning is to redevelop a neighborhood, looking as much as possible for a traditional neighborhood. We look forward to an opportunity through creative financing to do the lease purchase model. We think that's really important. We weren't able to get the traditional homeownership that we wanted, but we feel like that gives a good alternative. So we're looking forward to how that design will pan out for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have anyone else who would like to comment on the agenda item only? Looks like we do.
Good afternoon, Board of Commissioners, the attorney, all the Housing Authority staff that are here. My name is Janice Mitchell, and I am the founder and director of Urbana Neighborhood Connection Center. I know that the Urbana Neighborhood Connection Center was actually on the agenda several months ago, so we are not here to do a formal presentation. But I would like to take an opportunity, a very brief opportunity, to provide the Board of Commissioners with some information on the center, our programs and operations, and just at this time, it was last time we actually had our superintendent of schools that came with us, several of our board members. So this time, I thought that it would be very good if you would just hear from maybe one of our parents and a few of our children that are serviced at the Urbana Neighborhood Connection Center. So again, like I said, I know our time is very brief, and at this time, I would just like to introduce Ms. Beth Hand, who is going to give a very brief overview of the academics at the center.
Good afternoon. Having worked at the Urbana School District for 31 years, when I heard Janice was opening up the center, I was so pleased. It's a great service that's needed for our students, particularly the academic help. So once I retired, I had volunteered a little bit with her, and once I retired, I have been working more and more to the point of almost full-time now because of Janice, because of what she does with the kids. There's such a need for assistance for the children. We work so closely with the schools. The schools are so pleased that they get this help from the school district. For example, one of the grants I have is called an Intensive Literacy and Homework Help Service, and we have 3 former employees of the Urbana School District working on literacy, working on homework, working on math, communicating with the teachers constantly. We text back and forth. We take pictures of what they've done. We also work with the middle school kids for, again, that communication, getting them online, getting their reports done. So I just can't say enough about the services Ms. Mitchell offers in the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And this young man gonna tell us his name?
My name is Shamar, and I've been going to the center for 3 years now. I get help with my homework. I've enjoyed going to the center for all the time that I've been going, and I hope to continue going.
Thank you.
I'm Liberty. The center makes sure that I have good grades and I do my homework and I keep my grades up. And we do really good activities and educational activities.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is America. I'm in 4th grade and I go to Dr. Williams. What I like about the center is that I'm getting my homework done and my educational, and I keep my grades up. And what I also like about the center is the people and like how they help you with your homework.
Hi, my name is Tanaya, and I've been going to the center for 7 years now. And I like how we have like a special events help with the middle school from like people from the U of I, and we get hands-on activities, and we really get help with keeping our grades up and keeping our assignments in. And I like how we have a lot of hands-on activities with people from the U of I, and how we have activities when we get to like see how things work and really get to participate in things so we can understand it a lot more.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hannah, and I've been to the center for 6 years, since I was kindergarten, and I'm 11 in 5th grade. I like going to the center because it helps me with my homework a lot, and I like the people. When I have a rough day at school, they calm me down and spend my whole kindergarten whole life there, I say. So make me a better person.
Thank you.
My name is Montrell, and I'm in the 4th grade, and I go to Thomas Paine. And what I like about the center is that they help us, and they always, like, we have free time, and, like, they help us with our reading. And the staff are really funny.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Taylor Martin, and I go to Urbana High School. I'm actually a staff at the UNCC. I went there during 5th grade, and it helped me with my homework, and it helped me open up to people and like get help and stuff like that. Also, it has really helped me a lot because I get to bond with kids, and like I treat them like my little brothers and sisters, and like it's just really nice to have that friendship and that relationship with them and like their parents and guardians and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Akilah Miller. I'm actually one of the parents. I think the UNCC has been great. I'm a single parent. I work 2 jobs. I have 4 kids. Like I said, my kids have been going there. I have my youngest one there now. He's in kindergarten. He just absolutely love it. It's a joy to me to know that my kids are getting the help they need with their homework. So when I pick them up at 5:30, it's just basically dinner time, you know, winding down, little family time, bedtime, stuff like that. But I truly, truly appreciate this program, because without this, there's no telling, you know. It's hard out here for us parents, you know, but just to know that our kids are safe and in an environment and they actually get a meal. Some children don't, but my kids love it. Absolutely.
Amen.
As I said, I know we're keeping it very brief. Taylin Martin, who came up, she's a Urbana High School student. She is a graduating junior this year. She is part of our college and career readiness program, where at this time, I'm going to just ask all of our board members if you could just hold up the pictures that we have here. All of these students were former students and current either college graduates into college, in the workforce, or military. We do provide college and career readiness at least twice a month, college tours and other activities that you will be able to read about in that program. So as you take a look, you can see we are actually in our 5th year, and this program is on a weekend, and it is a volunteer program that we coordinate with Urbana High School, Central High School, and Centennial High School. So thank you very much. As we look to hopefully continue the support of the Housing Authority of Champaign County, at this time I am going to ask Dr. Francis if he would come and just close us out. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Francis E. Hedrika. I went right here to University of Illinois, and I've been here since 1983. And let me just give you short and sweet. First, I want to have all the board members just raise your hand, those of us who support the center. Let me just make it short and sweet. I always feel that there's a lot of people who sit around and talk about what they could do to help, but still end up doing nothing. And then there's a lot of people who get together and they spend so much time talking about what they could be doing, but still end up doing nothing. Then there's people like Janice Mitchell, who does so much for this community, does so much for these kids. And that's why those of us who are on the board have dedicated our time, our resources, and our influence, whatever it takes, to back this woman and this center, because we see the lives that it changes. We see the children. My feeling is that we have to target the children, because that's the best chance for the future. I always feel adults are already entrained in their habits, but children, if we can change their future, we change the entire outcome of humanity. And the beautiful things that she does with these children, and what that center stands in the minds of these children, what it stands for them, is just wonderful to see the changes. Thank you very much for your attention.
I'd like to thank you all for coming out and speaking on behalf of the center. At this time, we have a presentation from the University of Illinois of the 2017 Move to Work Evaluation Week.
Very good. Thank you, Chairman Lewis and the rest of the board. We really appreciate the chance to give an update to the board. We've submitted a written update in March or so as part of the communication to HUD that the agency's made, but there's a great chance for us to go through and give an update of all our research. Just to introduce our team, we've added Judy Yu-Ying Jing to our team this past year, but I continue to lead it, working with Kathy Strick, who's got a social work background, and also Dr. Lee, who's expert on program evaluation. He's an economist like me. So this is our study team. And just a quick overview, we've been working with the Housing Authority of Champaign County since 2011, and we were included in the application to HUD, in their MTW application, as an outside evaluator. And our evaluation, as stated in the application, focuses on the second main goal of the MTW program here around family self-sufficiency. So the big question we're asking is, how is the MTW program implementation here affecting family self-sufficiency? What are we learning? And so we're going to describe the impacts we're seeing, and also we're going to make some comments about how we think the MTW program has changed HACC over these past years that MTW has been being implemented. HACC is a really important part of the national level Moving to Work initiative. It was brought in with several other agencies in 2010 and in that time period. And evaluation was an important part of those agencies that joined at that time, because HUD didn't know that much about how the program was working. And so the results from Champaign County have been reported out nationally, and HUD policy staff are watching what's happening here in Champaign County. And our evaluation in terms of the analytic approach is unique because we do qualitative interviews, key informant interviews with individuals participating in the program, and we're also doing statistical analysis with 50058 administrative data. We have access to treatment plan data, and also we do a social survey. So some of our key findings, especially over this past year, we continue doing the qualitative work. The themes that we're seeing is when we analyze the interviews, we're looking for themes around respondents' reports about housing, housing quality, employment, employment barriers, employment successes, education, education gains, health issues that come up, financial situations and goals, and comparing them between the HACC people we study and the people we study from a non-MTW agency. Overall, we're seeing that HACC participants are reporting more stable housing and better housing conditions than the comparison agency, and here we're seeing marked increases, and people are reporting them in their interviews of increases in employment, income, and education gains. And then this past year, we've been analyzing the case notes from the local self-sufficiency program, and we looked at them from the period 2012 to 2016. We're seeing that 30% of the MTW eligible people are now accessing LSS case management services over that time period. And that's a significant increase from before MTW, or from before 2012. And then on the quantitative side, a big thing is we're seeing a statistically significant increase in annual earnings, a statistically significant increase in the probability of a person having employment, and having more jobs nearby and better access to public transportation is directly related to people doing better in the program. But we also see some people, those caring for disabled children, folks that have especially a felony background on their record, struggling and that's having a negative impact on their ability to succeed in the workforce. Our overview of what we're doing, we have 4 main thrusts of the analysis. We have a quantitative social survey that we've been implementing over time, and we have qualitative key informant interviews that we do with about 20-some HACC participants, and then also people from the comparison agency. And we get the case notes from HACC's LSS program, and we have access to the administrative 5005 data from HACC, and then we have data from HUD as a data release, that we have data from 6 other agencies that we can do comparisons with. And so just on the social survey, we've been following people over time We're happy to report that in 2016, 2017, the response rate, working with the agency to improve that part of the study, the response rate for HACC has gone up. So we're having more complete data about the program participants. All this data is completely confidential. There's no reporting of any individual level identifying information in our papers and in reports, but we're really happy to see the increase there. We're doing a bit better with the non-MTW agency, and that continues to be a challenge to make sure that we get good response, because we need to sort of prove a result, we need to have a comparison. And so that's why that's so important. One of the challenges that we've had, though, from the project-based voucher units at Oakwood Terrace, Oakwood Trace, Sycamore, and Thornberry, the response rate is really low. And that's been a challenge, and we need to work on that. It affects the quality of the data, because that's now a significant number of program participants in those units. And so we're having a 7% response rate there. If you look at the rest of the program participants, the response rate's much higher. And so we're going to need to work with the HACC management to see a way to improve that and work with the management of those units. On the key informant interviews, we're letting people tell from their perspective their own situation with regards to self-sufficiency, anything else they want to talk about, and especially about housing. And so far we've conducted 105 interviews, 45 with HACC participants, 41 non-MTW, and 19 wait lists. 3 of those folks have transitioned into current participants. And we follow them over time. Every couple years we do a key informant interview. And here's some of the comparisons we're seeing from people's own reports looking at the non-MTW agency and the MTW agency. Overall, a theme is that the housing situation for the MTW folks has been more stable over time, whereas the non-MTW less stable. The issue about work requirements and term limits comes up for the MTW people, and it's not an issue for the non-MTW. In terms of housing conditions, MTW respondents have talked about responsive landlords, pest control, and major maintenance, but still talk about rowdy buildings. But we haven't heard about substandard living conditions. However, in the comparison agency, this isn't a survey of everybody, it's a survey of key informants. We randomly identified them, but it's a small number. As I mentioned, it's 20, and people have to bring it up. And we do have a social survey that covers many of these things too. But this is the results from our qualitative work. We're hearing more problems from the non-MTW agency. In terms of employment, for the ones we've been able to analyze, we have people talking about work histories with increased employment hours and increased income. Still plenty of challenges, though many of the people are working low-wage jobs. There are some success stories we've seen, but others, people in close to minimum wage or minimum wage jobs. Similarly, in the other agency, in the ones we've analyzed, we have the mixed employment outcomes and also barriers around criminal background. One of the cases we've analyzed, the health conditions was a serious barrier. Education, some of the MTW folks are increasing their education, and that's compared to the comparison agency where we see some, but a little less there. On physical health, in both agencies, people are talking about chronic and acute health conditions. And for the ones we've been able to analyze for MTW, we're not seeing health affecting their employment. For the ones we've analyzed in the non-MTW, that's more of an issue. And then similarly on mental health, reporting of a mix of mental health outcomes, stress, anxiety, people talking about discrimination in the job market or in other places. One MTW participant depressed and suicidal. If we come across a person that talks about that, then by our IRB refer, we have to try to refer them to resources. If somebody talks about something like that in an interview setting. Overall, people in MTW, in part because of things like the LSS, are able to articulate goals, are tracking progress towards goals. Some of the people in the comparison agency are doing the same. We're seeing a bit of a difference between the two agencies. And then in terms of the local self-sufficiency program, just as a reminder, there's a work requirement in this program for able-bodied 18 to 54-year-olds. It's been phased in. The first recert, they develop a self-sufficiency plan. The second, one adult member must be employed 20 hours a week or enrolled in education or training. By the fourth, one adult member must be employed 20 hours a week, and all other adult members must be employed 20 hours a week or enrolled in education. And by the sixth, all adult members must be employed 20 hours a week. This was implemented in 2013 and modified in 2016 to 25 hours weekly. So the work requirement went up in 2016, and also an 8-year term limit was introduced in January 2016 and eliminating these phases. And so we've been looking at the self-sufficiency program. We're getting electronic case notes from the case management system of the social workers. And what we have to do is come out with a way to analyze this unstructured data. We have 2,100 or so case notes for 532 head of household participants and their dependents and adult household members. So we worked on a coding system, extracting variables from those case notes around a name, employment status, education status, health, mental health situation, whether they had a 90-day letter or a termination. So one of the key things in the national debate is there a differential around termination for MTW agencies? And so we're trying to dig in here and understand this process in some depth. We also are using the 50058 data and case notes from 2012 to 2016 to determine who accessed the LSS program, the case management services, how many times, and what were the reasons behind them. And here's some of the things we're seeing. So the blue line is all the MTW eligible over time, starting in 2012, going through 2016. The red line is the number of people in the in the treatment plan, and it's grown from about 2% of the blue line in 2012 to about 30% in 2016. So a significant increase in people who are in that program and getting those services over time. We analyzed how many years the people who accessed the LSS case management from 2012 to 2016, how many years they were involved in the LSS case management. About 29%.
Could you tell us what LSS means?
Yeah, the locals, yeah. Go ahead.
If you use an acronym, can you just say what it means the first time you used it?
Yes, ma'am. I apologize. it's the local self-sufficiency program. And so in the first year, 29% used it 1 year out of the 5 years. 31% used it 2 years. 26, 3 years. 13%, 4 years, and a small 1%, just a few, used it each year over that time period. So that gives you an idea of how much interaction people are having in the program. And then this is, we wanted to understand what's the pathway of people who are in that program, how many get employment, how many get an exemption or a waiver because of a health condition, how many age out, become 55 and older. And here's what we're seeing. Of the 532 in the LSS program in that time period, 418 continued to access the LSS in 2016. 114 no longer access LSS in 2016. And 65% were employed out of that 114, and so on. The ones that we especially want to watch are end of programs and 90-day termination letters and termination notices. And so it's in this group of people, it's just a small number, but we'll be watching that over time, and also looking at people who are terminated who are not in the LSS program.
Okay, the LSS program, is that program also for the family self-sufficient program where they save money in the bank and they can buy their own house and all that stuff? Is that the same?
No, it's not the same program. It's a different program that's used by moving to work organizations.
Okay, that's fine.
The LSS program is a case management program to help people connect to work opportunities or education. It's about setting goals and pursuing them in accordance to the overall program structure.
So do you have a program like that, though?
No, ma'am. We're evaluating the program. That Housing Authority has that program, and some of the staff, I believe, are here today.
Yeah, we don't have the traditional public housing's family self-sufficiency program. We have local self-sufficiency.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So turning to a more quantitative data about the impact of the program on employment and incomes. We wrote a paper this past year in a municipal policy journal here, and here are two charts from that paper. And the basic story is the HACC is this line here. And you can see from 2011 to 2016 that the annual household income increased significantly and at a much higher rate than similar-sized agencies, Illinois housing agencies, and public housing agencies on average nationally. And then when you look at household earnings, because income can include sources of income beyond employment, but when you look specifically at earnings and break it down by participants that are in the LSS program, participants, all the HACC participants, the comparison agency that we look at, and then also the comparison agency looking at their LSS participants and all their participants, you can see HACC has moved up significantly over time in percentage terms. And this graph gives it in money terms easily. That annual household earnings from 2011 to 2014 for HACC jumped up from 2012 to 2014. And one more tab, please, thank you. And then when you look at the probability of holding a job for HACC LSS program eligible households, that increased over that same time period also. And some of the things that explain and are correlated with people that are working 25 hours or more weekly at the community level, having more jobs nearby their homes, having better access to public transport, having a higher median household income is negatively related with it, but the other two are positively related. And then having a disabled child is negatively related to working more, so those people are having a much harder time. And then in terms of increased likelihood of working 25 hours or more, being female, African American, less, criminal history, less, and if people don't have a high school diploma or GED, less, or if they've received mental health services. And as some people may recall, this was a concern all the way along in MTW about what about people that face any barriers or challenges? How does that fit in their ability to adhere to program requirements? And that's why we're looking at these things. And then in terms of education, some of the people have been successful in finishing degrees or working on education goals. People with higher household incomes are less likely to enroll. Older people are less likely, and people with less than a high school diploma or GED are less likely. We looked at employment and job satisfaction and compared it with people who are working 35 or more hours and who are in the program, or 25 to 34 or less than 25. And as you might expect, people who are working less are more dissatisfied with their employment situation compared to the people who are working more. And then we've been tracking and concerned about the interrelationship between mental health, anxiety, and stress, and adhering with program requirements for people. Most of the participants are single mothers, many of them with children. And so we're tracking depression and anxiety using two depression scale and an anxiety scale. And that's correlated with work also. People who are working more are less likely to report depression or anxiety compared to people who are unemployed. Kathy, if you can go back. Just one point, still significant fractions of the population are scoring on these questions as depressed or anxious, according to commonly used public health mental health screens. So what have we been doing to report out? In October, we sent 2,000 newsletters, both to HACC and also the non-MTW Comparison Housing Authority age range participants. In December, we published an article that's available nationally. In January, we provided the interim executive director with information about the survey to include in the newsletter. In February, we submitted our annual report to the agency for their inclusion in their report to HUD. We have this presentation. We'll also present in Washington at the MTW conference next week. And I'm sure, again, there will be staff from both sides of the aisle, from Congress, and also HUD staff and GAO staff and other agency staff that are tracking these programs nationally. And then later in May, we'll make a visit to the non-MTW Comparison Agency and provide an update. And we value the relationship and the support of their ED and the staff for allowing us to work with them, even though they're not an MTW agency. So to wrap up, this program is evolving. I would say when you look at the participants now, they're different than the participants, say, in 2008. That because of when people are coming into the program, there's an expectation that people have a stronger work history. And also the work requirement is moving that work up. And so the agency's changing a bit. The profile of participants is different now than it was before, especially regarding the work history. The more people are utilizing LSS case management, there may be a need to look at that aspect of the program and just see how it's functioning and whether the people that have more barriers to work are able to, over time, overcome those barriers and get the supports they need, and whether there's enough there. And then the LSS household employment outcomes continue to increase, especially around the area of education and skills. However, people with a disabled child, we're seeing that they're having a difficult time meeting their program goals, and we have to track that. The key informant interviews show progress with education, employment, social networks. Still, many participants have a really difficult path. The labor market's not easy for them. Many of them are balancing significant child care responsibilities and other responsibilities. And so that they're reporting that, and it's in our reports. We need you to hear it. And HUD needs to hear it. And the HACC nationally is a significant MTW demonstration. And some of the unique things here are the way the work requirements are being implemented and also the time limits. So, thank you.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
How do you tie in the correlation between the students and the parents of the participants in the UNCC program?
I need to make sure I understand your question. The parents and the under 18s who are in school.
Yeah, and also in the UNCC program. I'd like to know, do you focus on any particular target group, or do you have a separate set of statistics, categories, or what?
So are you talking about?
Specifically the students.
The Urbana Neighborhood Program.
Yes, yeah.
So we don't have data about that. That's something that we could look into if the board felt that's an interesting and important dimension.
Well, then how do you have them included in the Moving to Work program?
Are they receiving housing assistance here? Are their families receiving housing assistance?
So, and so those people would be in the study. Right. But we don't have an identifier about what families participating in that program or a number of other programs. We have some general questions, and which specific question would you like answered?
Well, they're tied into the Moving to Work program, am I correct? The program?
I'm not clear about that.
Let me answer just a little bit of that, sir. I think you're referring to the program that presented earlier, and Moving to Work. Now, it may be some participants, children in that program. However, they're not tracking them as that program. They track them as our participants. So there's no correlation between the program, that program, and our participants and Moving to Work.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
In 2011, the program first started. Your Move to Work participant, you had a low percentage rate of them filling out the survey, and now you have a very high percentage rate. But those who are not participating in the program, you have a low percentage rate of those filling out the survey. What did you do with the Move to Work participant that caused them to become more productive?
It's at the agency level. So the MTW surveys are from this agency. The non-MTW are from another downstate housing agency that has a lot of similarities, but isn't here. And so that's where we work with their staff and their directors, and we've had the full support of the director and the staff here, and we have the support there, but we have better support here.
What is the other agency that's downstate?
That's private, yes.
Okay.
But,
So also,
yeah.
just to,
Well, I know at one time when you first started, you were gonna try and get the Decatur involved.
And we reached out to a number of different communities
Okay.
south of Chicago.
so to answer your question, the housing authorities made the survey mandatory here as part of the recertification process.
But the other agency doesn't do that. We still get some really valuable information, and we have 4 streams of data in this study, and so we can triangulate findings across them. We have 50058 data, which is administrative data on every housing participant, and then the survey data, the key informants, and now with HACC we have the case note data.
So how far out do you plan, or is it in your proposal, or how far out are you gonna track this?
So this was part of the application to HUD, and I think others can talk about that
It's actually
better.
a requirement of our MTW agreement that we must have an evaluation process, and our current agreement runs through 2028.
Okay.
So they will continue to evaluate, because it's a mandatory requirement under MTW to have an evaluation.
Another question.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So just a couple of questions. First, I'd love to get a digital version. Could we get the digital
Certainly,
version of the
certainly. And I think
presentation?
the authority has it.
Okay. Okay. And then, what's the, how do you control for different economic conditions between the moving to work, our agency here and the comparison agency? How do you ensure that, I mean, we're kind of unique in being a mid-sized college town, so how do you control for those differences and looking at outcomes?
Right, and so we're controlling, and I may ask Dr. Lee to pitch in here a bit. We can control things at the neighborhood level. We can control for things certainly at the individual level. We cannot randomize. This is not a randomized, if you understand evaluation, the strongest level would be if we could randomize, right? We can't do that. The whole agency is an MTW agency, and so we can control for things at the neighborhood level. But if there's fundamentally different labor force issues, and they do differ across cities, that has an effect. We can also look not only with the 50058 data, we have more than just one agency, right? We have multiple agencies, and we can do stronger matching with that.
Okay. Is the unemployment in a comparable agency similar to ours?
It's a bit higher.
It's higher. Okay. And then the second question is, why doesn't your research, unless I'm missing something, interview people who have been removed from housing authority subsidies because of lack of compliance with moving to work? So I would see that as, it's kind of like, I'm going to interview everyone at Yale, and everyone at Yale is doing well because they made it into Yale, and they keep getting grades to stay in Yale,
Sure.
and they graduate from Yale. So it's important to look at who didn't get into
Sure.
Yale, or who may have gotten kicked out of Yale or didn't. So
Right.
my question is, I would want to know what happened, what were the barriers to participation, why do we lose some people? Do you
Right.
look at that, or have
Yeah,
you looked at that?
this has been a concern from the get-go. And the things that we're able to do, so first off, when people leave, a lot of times they're not interested in talking to anybody. So we do have a problem with response rates and follow-ups for people who've had to end a program there. But we're able to look at the 50058 and compare ourselves with other agencies.
What's the 505?
It's the HUD administrative data system that has data on every program participant. And
I see, across all agencies.
all the agencies.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
and so what we're able to do do is look at attrition and dropping out and ending a program in this agency and compare it to some other agencies, and we have not seen a difference so far. But as I said, we're digging in more with the treatment plan data, and we are interested in that question like you are, and we'll keep on pushing on that. That's an important, from a policy level nationally, that's an important question that people that are looking at this program want to know the answer to.
It seems like, I mean, so as an employer, if I fire someone, I request an exit interview, and usually I'm able to receive that, and if not, there can be incentives to receive that, like they're still working at the time. So this comes up all the time in an employment situation. You might be separating from an employee, but the exit interview is really important, right? It tells you so many things about the employment situation.
Sure.
So my question is, I know that the university typically incentivizes folks to participate. I send people all the time, and they receive gift cards, et cetera, to participate in activities. Is there an incentive to participate in these surveys? And could there be an incentive for those who are exiting the program to participate?
We've had incentives. We do have an incentive, and we can do that. I will say some people, we can work on this more if the board wants us to spend more attention on it. Our strategy this next year on understanding end of program participation was to work with the agency staff and try to get better documentation that's clear around it. But also a targeted survey strategy could be something to be considered.
Yeah, also, did you guys ever think about giving a survey of what the do's and what they do and don't like about the program? Or
It's in there, and we are designed to hear that from people. And
that could be a good strategy for exit. I don't know. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, and we can look at that. And I will say the relationship with a housing authority is very different than an employment relationship. A lot of times people just kind of go. And you don't know where they are, you don't know, I mean, we've done tracking with marketing data, and it's very time consuming if they don't have that, if they don't want the relationship, it's over.
And just the last is, how do you account for self-selection when you get the high motivated, high participators in responses to the program? How do you account for that? Or it sounds like it's not random, it's more like people self-select whether or not they're participating. Is that correct? You send out surveys and a certain number come back and they're self-selecting whether or not to participate?
In terms of response, but we also have administrative data on everybody. And a lot of the statistics we showed you was on, it's the population, it's not a sample. Okay. It's the population. Okay. And so that's why we don't put inference bars around it. It's the whole enchilada.
Okay, that was all my questions.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from
Just
anyone?
one more.
Yes.
The comparison agency, they just citywide or countywide?
They're county.
Okay. I just have one final
Yes, sir.
question. So far up to this point, what are, if you could share with us some of your highs and lows?
Well, I think the challenge of response rate is a significant thing for going deeper than what's just in the administrative data. It's also an enormous amount of work to do the qualitative work. I cannot emphasize how time-consuming that is. And the incentives for a non-MTW agency to cooperate with this study are not very high, right? They don't have any requirement in their agreement with HUD. So we really appreciate that, but that's a relationship that is just based on goodwill and us providing them with some information about their program, and it's good, but it's been a challenge.
Appreciate your thoughts
Yes.
on that.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Not. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you so much.
And next on the agenda is the approval of minutes from March 22nd, 2018, regular meeting.
So moved. I'd like to make a correction.
to the minutes. Commissioners absent, besides Commissioner Chenoweth, Commissioner Henry was not here. Are there any other corrections? If not, I'd like to have a second.
Second.
Roll call.
Chairman Lewis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rose,
Yes.
Commissioner Walker,
Yes.
Commissioner Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Turnbull,
Yes.
and Commissioner Chenoweth.
Yes.
New business. Resolution 2018-09, approval to write off tenant account receivable. Matt gonna give us a presentation.
This resolution is to write off collectible tenant accounts receivable. Periodically, we like to clean up our books from an accounting standpoint. We still pursue collections on these amounts, but we move them from current tenant accounts receivable to basically a collection loss account. So it's been a while since we've done this. So you'll see the total there is $13,630.77 of vacant tenants who have been vacant over 45 days.
Did the commissioner have any question of Matt? If not, I would like to entertain a motion at this time.
I'll move resolution 2018-09, approval to write off uncollectible tenants accounts receivable.
Second.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner, Vice Chair Rose,
Yes.
Commissioner Walker,
Yes.
Commissioner Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Turnbull,
Yes.
and Commissioner Chenoweth.
Yes.
Next is resolution 2018-10, approval of revised travel policy.
With this resolution, it kind of was initiated by the state of Illinois passing what's called the Local Government Travel Expense Control Act, which was effective January 1st of 2017. And we just wanted to make sure that our travel and training policy complies with that. So there were some things within that regulation passed by the state that we didn't explicitly have in our policy. One of the things was a cap for any travel. We did have a cap in our policy regarding the Board of Commissioners travel and training, a $4,000 cap. We didn't have anything specifically stated as it relates to other staff. So we did, we included something here in section 3 of this resolution that does say the maximum is $4,000, and that does apply to anyone who is traveling, so employees and officers. Another thing is in section 5, you'll see that if someone were to exceed that, if there was a circumstance where it needed to exceed that, it would have to be approved by the board, as well as any board travel and any travel by the executive director or CEO would need to be approved specifically by vote by the board. So that's something that some agencies just cover that by the approval of the financials for the month. It's something that we probably will discuss if we want to explicitly have, these are the travel expenses that were incurred by the board CEO, and just having the board approve those. So those are the changes. We do have the policy attached, and there is something that in the guidelines they said you have to have a standard way of approving the expenses to get reimbursement or the upfront costs for that travel, and we do have that, so that form is included as well.
Traditionally, a number of the housing authorities in the state, they approve travel when they approve the budget for the officers in training and for the board members who have certain travels they need in case something as an emergency come up or something just happen to happen. Well, HUD asks you to come to DC for a purpose. Then we'll go a different route. And also the reimbursement is always for the executive director or CEO, and the board comes to the board for approval after that travel, but not the staffs. The staffs are treated a little different.
Any questions?
No.
If not, I would like to entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve resolution 218-10, approval of revised travel policy.
Second.
Roll call.
Chairman Lewis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rose.
Yes.
Commissioner Walker,
Yes.
Commissioner Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Turnbull,
Yes.
and Commissioner Chenoweth.
Yes.
Next is Resolution 2018-11, approval to accept purchase offer for 205 West Park Street.
We received an offer for this building, so we're very excited. They actually made an offer initially at $825. The building was appraised at $835, so we countered at $835, and they've accepted that. So the resolution is to sell the building to the CU Christian Church for $835,000 and to complete a closing not later than October 31st. They originally asked for September 30th. We stretched it back to October 31st.
It's just a curiosity question. And it is, we're selling it to a church. I mean, we have no problem with that. But with the parking lot, that is being shared by.
Yeah, we actually have a lease for the parking lot. It's an actual transferable lease document. And we had our attorney review it, and they have a copy of it as well, and they understand that it's a lease for the parking lot. This building has unlimited access to the parking lot Monday through Friday between 8 and 5. And then the church and this agency share it the rest of the time.
Okay.
They didn't seem concerned. They have a copy of the lease for the parking lot. My understanding is they use the Virginia Theater for services occasionally. And so I'm not real familiar with the church, but they're very familiar with the building and everything, so.
Any questions by the other commissioners? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion at this time.
Make a motion that we approve Resolution 218-11, approval to accept purchase offer for 205 West Park Street.
I second it.
Chairman Lewis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rose,
Yes.
Commissioner Walker,
Yes.
Commissioner Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Turnbull,
Yes.
and Commissioner Chenoweth.
Yes.
Next is Resolution 2018-12, approval to award bid for the new office construction.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This resolution is for some remodel work and in addition to the new office building that we purchased on North Market Street. The project will include, in the existing building, it was a medical facility, so it had a lot of exam rooms, which work very well for offices, but each room has a sink and some cabinets, so those need to come out. We're going to put in some flooring. It needs painted, but it's pretty minor amount of activity in that building. And then the remainder is for an addition for the boardroom, some storage space, and then the finance department offices would be in a new addition.
Have any questions? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll move Resolution 2018-12, approval of bid award for 2008 North Market Street.
I second it.
Chairman Lewis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rose,
Yes.
Commissioner Walker,
Yes.
Commissioner Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Turnbull,
Yes.
Commissioner Chenoweth.
Yes.
Next is Resolution 2018-13, approval to amend the IGA
Pass these out to the board.
with the City of Champaign for Bristol Place.
As Carrie Wyman mentioned when she spoke prior to the, for items on the agenda, we have an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Champaign that we actually entered into in November of 2012 to partner on the redevelopment of Bristol Place. A copy of the amendment to that intergovernmental agreement was in your board package, but Matt is passing out one where you'll see a couple of highlights in yellow. We got together with the city attorney, and there were a couple of things that they wanted to add, so I'll just point those out real quick. Section 3 of the original IGA, we actually amended it to say that our actual contribution on Phase 1 decreased from $1,092,000 to $1,010,922. Ms. Wyman mentioned that when she was speaking earlier. And then we just clarified a couple of things under Section 10. Number 2, we just clarified that the new development is anticipated to be 2 separate new construction projects. Under number 4, we added a permanent first mortgage, which is a critical part of the financing. and we corrected it to say the Urbana Home Consortium. I had referred to it as Champaign County. And then under number 6 on the second page, we just added the city of Champaign. The final piece is the development of a lease purchase activity for the 60 single-family homes. And Carrie talked about that when she spoke. It has always been the intent that the single-family homes that will be built will in fact be sold to those tenants at the end of the 15-year tax credit compliance purpose. So in order for us to do that, we'll have to have a separate lease purchase program in our 2019 MTW plan that will address how that program will work. So those are I just wanted to highlight those quick changes that we made when we met with the city's attorney.
Also, just to add, they had a zoning board meeting last week, which I attended. The zoning board members were very happy with the project and excited to move it forward with approval to the city council.
Any question by the board? Not like.
Yeah, I have questions.
Go ahead.
So I just had a couple of questions reading through this. The narrative says that there's 90 units and we're going to give 84 project-based vouchers for 20 years. But then the chart below says 86 rather than 84 vouchers for 15 years. So I'm confused because the narrative seems to be different than the chart, and I'm trying to figure out which is correct.
The actual correct is the 86 vouchers for the 20 years.
For 20 years.
Correct.
86 okay, so it's a mixture of the two.
Correct.
All right. So we might want to just make that correction.
Sure.
The issue is, so if we give 86 vouchers for 20 years, but it seems like at 15 years the residents can purchase?
Correct.
So what happens for the other 5 years? Is it just that, what happens in the 5 years between the 15 years when they can purchase and the allocation of vouchers?
The contract actually decreases by the units that are sold. So if we start out with 86 units and we have in year 15, we have 20 people purchase, it'll go down to 66. In year 16, if we have another 10 purchase, it goes down to 56. So the contract for the vouchers decreases as the people purchase the homes.
So actually purchasing is in the best interest of the housing authority because there's less vouchers being put out in terms of dollars.
Correct, the vouchers will decrease. As they purchase, there will no longer be a voucher available.
Okay.
For that house, but it
For that house, correct, exactly. For the house that gets purchased.
Got it, I see. And then, I am not asking staff to redo an entire understanding of Bristol Place because I'm coming in the 11th hour, so I understand that. But I was trying to put all of the money together to see, okay, there's vouchers worth 11.3 million. There's cash being later in this meeting $540,522. There's 14 vouchers that for relocation. It sounds like a portion of those were used, and that's for $470,400. My point being is, what is the total dollar amount, including the 11.3 million in vouchers? All the phase 1 cash, what is the total housing authority commitment to this project?
Cindy, before you go into the total, can I just add something?
Sure.
Now, the housing authority's requirement is to utilize our vouchers. So whether the vouchers go into the project as project-based or we keep them and provide tenant-based vouchers, we have to use those vouchers. So the money, we're really not giving money away. We just utilize what we already supposed to utilize in a different way.
If you look on page 35 of your packet, the Exhibit A kind of does that. I put a summary underneath the chart that shows the HACC contribution. So if you look for phase 1, which phase 1, it's a little confusing because phase 1 was actually the acquisition and the demolition and the relocation. So under phase 1, the Housing Authority contributed 14 vouchers for 5 years, which had a value of the $470,400. In addition to that, we made a cash payment of the $545,22. So our total for phase 1 is the $1,010,922.
Okay.
Okay, in phase 2, we have the 86 vouchers, And I actually valued them at 15 years instead of 20 because we do anticipate that the people will purchase the units. That's the primary goal.
Got it.
Okay? So the $8,820,000 that you say is the value over the 15 years. And again, it's very important to understand that these are estimates because it's based on an estimated average subsidy per month, and that changes. And ideally, if these folks are moving towards homeownership, they're going to have higher incomes, so our cost per voucher is actually probably going to be less than what's being estimated here. Okay? We're putting in cash in the form of a secondary loan to the project of $1.5 million. So our total for phase 2, which is actually phase 1 of construction, okay, is the $10,320,000. So that's the total $11,339,22 that the Housing Authority has committed for these 2 phases.
And the $1.5 million in phase 2 is actually a loan that comes back to us?
It's a, I want to say that it is a loan, but it is in second place. So it is payable to us in the form of available cash flow only.
Okay.
So we may or may not get annual payments.
Based
okay.
on cash flow.
Based on the cash flow of the project, that's correct.
Okay.
Cindy, what was the overall budget for the whole project again?
Well, the overall project was the vouchers. The numbers that you see are what we had estimated back in 2012.
The whole development project.
Oh, the overall development project is 26 million, Carrie? 23, 24, yeah.
I just wanted to be certain.
That's the total cost of the project.
And does that include the vouchers in that?
No, that is just the total development cost to build the new 90 units, correct.
Okay, and the only operations is it, well, the additional input, public inputs after construction are the 11.3 million from the Housing Authority in terms of vouchers. So it's 23 million to build
and then the 8.8 million that we're estimating right now for the vouchers for phase 2.
Yeah, phase 2.
Right,
Pull out the first
right.
one.
The vouchers for phase 1 have already been given to people for relocation purposes.
Okay. And then my second question is, a big piece of the change for today is eliminating the LEED standard for a housing authority, and that is at the developer's request for cost savings. Of course, the developer is going to ask for that because it costs money to make things more energy efficient. I would like to know what's the impact on the residents. We're talking about moving to home ownership, and one of the biggest impacts that people face in their monthly bills is their utility bills. And so if we eliminate LEED, what kind of floor are we providing, or what kind of standard are we asking them to set? Or essentially, can they build, I mean, I'm being dramatic, but can they build like card paper walls, you know, and because we see that actually, I mean, in Urbana.
Carrie's actually, the city has had much more discussion with the developer about the LEED, so I'll let Carrie address that, please.
Thank you. And just what we're losing is the LEED ND, which is the neighborhood development piece. And I would suggest that maybe we follow up with the developer, maybe a report to the board, just to explain exactly for the actual units, the utility costs. I think those are excellent questions and points. From the city perspective, we were the ones that really desired the LEED ND component. That spoke more to the walkability of the neighborhood, the transportation that would be available. And so the kind of the final defining moment, if you will, of not going the LEED ND route was more about the height of the building. So more of the view, and that the end units on a particular block would have to be higher, which really doesn't have much to do with, I think, what your concern is, or some of the things that the city wanted to achieve. So we were happy to let that piece go. But we can follow up, I think, and ask the utility. I know there is still some requirements and things as far as energy efficiency that will be in the units. I can't speak to those specifically, but I think we could have the developer provide those and talk to the utility piece, because I think we all agree that's very important.
Yeah, especially since we're talking about long-term investment in bricks and mortar, and the dollars quantified over a long period of time for families in terms of utility payments, as well as, of course, the impact on the climate. So I think it's useful for us to hold the line, and it sounds like we're letting go of this particular standard, but City of Champaign still kind of holding line on making sure that there's an energy efficiency built into the units. Is that correct?
we don't have a requirement on the energy efficiency beyond what a federal, like the home program with those requirements, or with the housing authority?
The Illinois Housing Development Authority, which is financing a large portion of the 23 million through tax credit equity, has very strict standards about that still have to be met, even if it's not LEED certified. And so those standards absolutely will be met and have to be met, and every construction draw is also inspected and approved by IDA. And so IDA actually becomes the enforcer of the energy conservation methods that have to be in the construction. They have very strict standards about that.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful to understand.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
Any other questions? Not, I'd like to have a motion.
A motion that we approve Resolution 2018-13 to approve the amended the IGA with the City of Champaign for the Bristol Place.
Second. Roll call.
Chairman Lewis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rose.
Yes.
Commissioner Walker,
Yes.
Commissioner Henry.
Yes.
Commissioner Turnbull,
Yes.
and Commissioner Chenoweth.
Yes.
Next is Resolution 2018-14, approval to award contract for market and media support.
We've talked a lot with the board about how we don't do a very good job telling our story, and I think we heard this morning the presentation by the U of I about a lot of the really good outcomes that we're having. And so this is a contract for 1 year to contract with MMG that will assist the Housing Authority and David and his new team in being able to do pull together the stuff that we do, and like the valuation. You saw a bunch of people filming and taking photos as that was going on, that will be able to document for our website, for public distribution at the national level, the things that we're doing for MTW. So that's what this proposal is. David, I don't know if you have anything.
Well, messaging is so important to what we do as an organization, because it's important that the community see what we do and see the outcomes of what we're doing. So I would appreciate it, you guys working on that ahead of time for that purpose.
And I've heard we already on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yes.
We on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and I think Instagram. So we've been working pretty hard getting that going, and one of the things that the company is going to help us with is solidify a schedule of when things should be posted. Newsletters should come out on Facebook and everything. So it'll be a great product at the end.
No question. So I totally agree with needing to tell our story. My concern with the proposal as it's written is it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's 1 year, it's $70,000, it's $5,000 per month at 40 hours per month, whether that is used or not. So it's like a standard flat fee. And I couldn't really find the deliverables in the, like I'm looking, I mean, I've written many contracts like this. I used to run a media company, but the deliverables in this contract are very vague. When they talk about targeting, they're talking about targeting the community at large. That's not really a target. So my question is, who are we telling the story to, and how? What are the actual hard deliverables in this contract? And how did we select this firm? What's their track record? What was that process? And I am concerned about the 5,000. I mean, basically, we're paying the same level as we're paying a moving to work consultant per month, and it's unclear if they're getting paid for actual hours worked or if they're just getting a flat rate, whether we use them or not.
It's actually for hours worked, and the deliverables, they do individual like task orders for each deliverable, because it was very difficult with David coming on, you know, trying to define up front what each and every deliverable will be, and those can easily change over time. And so before they do anything, there's an individual task order that David would sign off on, and that's how it would be done.
Is it, well, find the piece that says it says $5,000 a month. Let me find the section.
Yeah, it's on page.
In the contract.
It's a not to exceed amount.
Right.
Didn't see not to exceed. Yeah, just was
It's
reading
a
too
not to
fast.
exceed amount.
Okay.
And they have an amazing track record as you look for what you're looking for. They have an amazing track record. They've done a great job with Rockford. As we all know, Rockford went through a number of community-related issues with a major development. and they was able to save that development by helping message the information. Also, they put Rockford on a map in terms of telling their story throughout the community and throughout the nation.
It's under number 4 on page 5, Danielle.
Yeah, thank you.
Of their contract. And yes, they were selected. HUD has a provision, they call it piggyback, and it's basically if a housing authority has procured a firm for a service and another housing authority wants or needs that same service, you basically piggyback on the contract that was procured. And so it's very difficult to find media companies that are really familiar with housing authorities and what housing authorities do. This company was, David and I talked about this company because they are familiar with housing authorities. They've worked for years and extensively with the Rockford Housing Authority on some very challenging community issues.
Is there products at the end of this, or is it planning? At some point it said it's a planning contract.
No, there's products.
Both.
They've
It's
already
both.
produced several products for us. I didn't show it today because we had the U of I interview, but we have a very nice video that they did for Muhammad to tell our story about Muhammad because we've been going to zoning meetings in Tolono.
Okay.
So that video, and I'm going to show it to the board next month's meeting. I just didn't want to take more time because of the presentation today. But they've already done a video. They've done several 90 to 120 minute or 20-second spots, I guess, with David that are short things that we can plug into different places. So there's several things that they've done already.
I appreciate that because then it makes more sense. My concern is under 4, it says, basically it's mutually agreed that a minimum guaranteed monthly fee paid in advance for consultation, planning, and account service for each month shall be $5,000 payable in monthly installments.
Right.
And I'm trying to, that doesn't sound like a not to exceed, that sounds like a minimum. Am I not reading that correctly?
No, you are. It's
So
not.
it's
It's not
5,000 a
worded.
month.
It is not. I think this is a standard contract, and it isn't worded the way that we've negotiated it with them. So we will have to amend that.
Okay, yeah, it should be that basically
Yes.
payment for services,
Yes.
not flat rate. I just don't think that's good for government entities to go.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll maybe we can basically say that that would be approved as the contract would be amended to say that it's payment for services. I've made a note of that.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this the same company that you use in Lake County?
Well, we actually didn't use a company in Lake County. We started with a company out of Chicago, Marilyn Katz and Associates, years ago, and she helped us in a way to set a plan in place. So we did it ourselves. So I had to hire staff, and if you look at the amount of not to exceed and the staff I had to hire to get ready to tell our message, it's well more than that amount that's on paper.
And the Housing Authority of Champaign County does such an excellent job, one
Yes.
of the leading housing authorities in the nation. However, we do a poor job of telling our story. And that's why it's necessary that we have marketing media to come in and share with the public all the great things that this housing authority is doing.
And it's also important to share the wealth with other housing authorities. You know, why recreate the wheel? If we're doing something amazing in our community that's working, we share that story and other housing authorities can pick it right up. In Lake County, we did a pretty good job of sharing that story. Over probably 70 years, we received over 55 awards from the National Association of Housing Redevelopment Officials, and most recently we received a National Award of Excellence. And that's the same kind of work I want to bring here to the Champaign County Housing Authority. And telling that story gets those awards and that recognition. And awards are awards, but that brings more credibility to what we do in this agency.
I think that if you give them the guidance and the directions, I think this will be excellent, because when we interviewed you, you had just an impeccable presentation and booklets, all the wonderful things you did in Lake County before you came here. So I think that'll be an asset for you as we move forward, as well as the community and the Housing Authority of Champaign County. So
That's correct. I'll piggyback off of that, but I also like to say we always had people come in and say that they didn't know what we were doing, and most of the time when people are beating all up on us, it'd be great for them to know all the good things we're doing too.
If you don't tell your story, somebody else will.
Do we have any other comments? If not, I would like to entertain a motion at this time.
Can I make a motion to approve the contract with Multimedia Marketing Group with a specific change that staff will work out where the amount is based on hours work and task orders submitted rather than any minimum payment.
I second it.
Roll call?
Chairman Lewis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rose,
Yes.
Commissioner Walker,
Yes.
Commissioner Henry.
Yes.
Commissioner Turnbull,
Yes.
and Commissioner Chenoweth.
Yes.
Next is Resolution 2018-15, approval of sale of 415 North 3rd Street, Fisher.
First, I'd like to correct the resolution and take out the be it further resolved. I cut and pasted from another resolution, so my apologies that was an error, so that comes
We
out.
don't have the $500 per month.
No, please cross that out. That was an error on my part. This is a parcel of land that we purchased in Fisher, and it originally was to develop senior housing. The site is not appropriately zoned that will allow development, and we've been unable to successfully secure the zoning change. So we have received an offer for $93,000. We purchased it for $80,000 in 2015. We've received a purchase offer for $93,000. We had the appraisal updated. It appraised at $90,000, so this exceeds the appraised value. So we're recommending that we sell this land and we search for land that's appropriately zoned. We're getting beat up on the zoning hearings in Tolono right now, and I think it gets difficult to get the rezoning, and that whenever we can find land that's appropriately zoned, it just makes it easier for us to do what we do.
And we plan to close Monday, correct?
Yes, we'd like to close. Once it was premised on closing next week based on the board's approval today.
Any questions from the board? Being none, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll move Resolution 2018-15, approval of sale of 415 North 3rd Street, Fisher.
I second it.
Roll call?
Commissioner Lewis.
Yes.
Vice Chair Rose.
Yes.
Commissioner Walker.
Yes.
Commissioner Henry.
Yes.
Commissioner Turnbull.
Yes.
And Commissioner Chenoweth.
Yes.
Next is Resolution 2018-16, approval of partnership with Illinois WorkNet Center.
Now, the WorkNet Center is a resource in the community that you utilize to help improve your clients that you serve. The Housing Authority hadn't been a partner. It's around $3,000 a year to partner with them. So instead of the Housing Authority focusing and trying to do all that work itself, that partnership will go a long way for our clients to become self-sufficiency.
Any questions or inquiries? Like to entertain a motion?
I move Resolution 2018-16, approval to partner with Illinois WorkNet Center.
Aye.
Roll call?
Chairman Lewis.
Yes.
Vice Chair Rose.
Yes.
Commissioner Walker.
Yes.
Commissioner Henry.
Yes.
Commissioner Turnbull.
Yes.
And Commissioner Chenoweth.
Yes.
Next, I'd like to entertain a motion to go into closed session to discussion of purchase or sale of real property. And if no action to be taken, to adjourn. If action to be taken, then we come back into open session.
Well, we can just do, because we know we're coming back into open session.
Right. So do we need a
Your
motion?
motion?
I make a motion that we adjourn to closed session.
Second.
And those are for the purposes of real estate purchase and sale.
We need to take that in the
I'm just
motion.
making sure
Yeah, I'm just,
Okay.
I have it on here, so.
Okay.
Do I need to do a roll call? Okay. Chairman Lewis.
Yes.
Vice Chair Rose.
Yes.
Commissioner Walker.
Yes.
Commissioner Henry.
Yes.
Commissioner Turnbull.
Yes.
And Commissioner Chenoweth.
Yes.
5:15 p.m. We're coming out of closed session and we entering back into our open session. Cindy, could you call the roll?
Chairman Lewis.
Present?
Vice Chair Rose.
Here.
Commissioner Walker.
Here.
Commissioner Henry.
Here.
Commissioner Turnbull.
Here.
And Commissioner Chenoweth.
Yes, here.
On our agenda is ratification and amendment of the following resolution.
Can we do number 8 first, because we got the,
Number 8.
Correct.
Eric, we need to do the first motion at
Exactly.
the top
The,
first.
one of the things we discussed was a land swap. So if the board
That
is so
first motion.
inclined, we need a
I'll make-
motion. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion for a new resolution 2018-17. And it'll be a motion for Haven at Marketplace land swap.
I second it.
Roll
And-
call.
Is that enough information?
Well, and I'm just going to give some
Read.
more for the public.
Yeah.
It's a motion to approve the exchange of approximately 8.8 acres at Newton Drive and Prospect Avenue for approximately 13.8 acres at Interstate Drive and Tolson Lane at no additional cost to the authority, and authorizing the CEO to execute all necessary land documents to complete the exchange.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner Rose.
Yes.
Commissioner Walker,
Yes.
Commissioner Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Turnbull,
Yes.
and Commissioner Chenoweth.
Yes.
Next is old business, to either ratify and/or amendment of the following resolution. The first one that we're gonna take on is Resolution 2018.04, approval of property sale, 401 East Main Street, Urbana.
Okay, the board would make a motion to amend Resolution 2018-04 to direct the executive director to produce a contract and a memorandum of agreement between UNCC and the Housing Authority to bring back to the board. And the provisions within that contract would include that HACC will pay no cost for the space it will continue to utilize. There would be a deed restriction that would be recorded on the property that would prohibit the transfer or the sale of the property. The property would revert back to the Housing Authority when no longer used by UNCC, or if UNCC ceases its operations. It would prohibit the any indebtedness to the property without the prior written authorization of HACC. And in addition to that, the the board will require a resolution from the board of UNCC indicating that it accepts the building and the contract.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Excuse me. Just for the public and also for the notes, I wanted to list a couple of things that came out of the session that are relevant. This property was purchased for $370,000 and was used as a storage unit and then transferred to UNCC rent-free for a number of years. The Housing Authority has continued to pay upkeep on the building without rent, which is one of the reasons that we're looking to do a transfer. There's an estimated $70,000 in repairs and $5,000 per year in insurance and other fees that go into the building. The interest in transferring the building is one, to reduce the liability for the Housing Authority. Second, to tighten and grow the relationship between the Housing Authority and Urbana Neighborhood Connections. There's been an informal relationship, and we're looking to formalize that with a memorandum of understanding so that we can pursue mutual goals. And to essentially support the community with an underused resource that belongs to the Housing Authority through the transfer. So to clarify, the transfer will not be complete until it comes back to the board.
Commissioner Rose moved and Commissioner Chenoweth seconded, so I'm going to do roll call. Chairman Lewis?
Yes.
Vice Chair Rose?
Yes.
Commissioner Walker?
Yes.
Commissioner Henry?
Yes.
Commissioner Turnbull?
Yes.
And Commissioner Chenoweth?
Yes.
Next, I would like to entertain a resolution for ratification of, a motion for ratification of Resolution 2018-05, 2018-06, 2018-07, and 2018-08.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Chairman Lewis?
Yes.
Vice Chair Rose?
Yes.
Commissioner Walker?
Yes.
Commissioner Henry?
Yes.
Commissioner Turnbull?
Yes.
And Commissioner Chenoweth?
Yes.
Next, we will have our report from our Chief Executive Director, David Northern. For those of you who are not aware, he's the new Executive Director for the Housing Authority of Champaign County.
Thank you, sir. Effective April 1st, so it's been a pretty busy month already. So I just want to make sure to provide you guys with some updates on what's been going on. We provide a detailed board packet with information, so I won't read everything to you, but I will provide updates and we can answer any possible questions that you may have. First, again, I started April 1st and we started out on a fast pace. We had an opportunity to meet with the county chair, both mayors of Urbana and Champaign, and other community partners and a number of clients also. I attended U of I, Department of Urban Planning, documentary on Cabrini Green, and had an opportunity to meet with a number of professors there. Just yesterday, I came back from DC, representing the Housing Authority at the NARO conference. What we learned in DC was a lot of information about HUD's plans into the future that affect us at a local level. We had an opportunity to hear from Ben Carson. I had an opportunity to meet both of our U.S. representatives, Davis and Shimkis. I'm going to pronounce that right. Their housing staff, and what I was able to do was update them on some of the goals that we have as an organization, so they can make sure they represent us in the right way, or if we have any issues, we can reach out. So building that relationship was very important. We talked about responsible funding, empowering local housing authorities to make decisions, housing infrastructure as an important piece of the president's purpose in terms of infrastructure. We talked about preserving affordable housing and building more public-private partnerships to decrease the cost of taxpayers on affordable housing. Also, I brought a copy of the legislative agenda, and I'll make sure I get copies to all the board members so you guys have an opportunity to read it also. Lastly, we talked about MTW, well, Moving to Work program, and how overall the housing industry's goal is to open it up to other housing authorities and other communities so they can utilize that program and benefit the local community. Lastly, we talked about Champaign County and its developments and projects. I passed out our corporate resume, and they were impressed with what we've been able to do so far, and they support our efforts. Next, a few highlights about our departments. In Housing Choice Voucher, we have about a 92% utilization rate. In property management, occupancy overall is high. We have some vacancies due to relocation and some repairs going on. As far as tenant charges, they're in very good situation. One thing to know about tenant charges, one person can throw off the percentage of your rents collected. But as we reviewed it, they're in pretty good situation right now. As of March 31st, we have 72% of individuals that's part of our Moving to Work self-sufficiency program that's working, and 4% of them in school or training currently. Lastly, I want to talk about briefly a piece of paper I passed out to the board members. As part of my onboarding into this community and also being integrated into the community and then building as partners, we've talked about this in my interview, the voice of the constituents. And that's the focus on the community, the clients, and employees. Why do we want to do this? We want to make sure that we hear those who we serve, those who's impacted by our programs. What we want to do, we want to capture the voices and concerns of the community, the clients, and employees for any possible changes that may need to occur here at the Champaign County Housing Authority. How we'll do that by facilitating meetings and sessions, with somebody recording those sessions, and also providing surveys, and we receive the information back, take a look at it, and make a decision as a group on how we want to move forward. Lastly, a couple ways we want to utilize that is focus groups, surveys again, who we want to represent, the demographics impacted by our organization, including not limited to residents, employees, and community partners. This is a process I feel is very important coming in as a new executive director, relieving an executive director that served for over 13 years at the Housing Authority. Outcomes is to begin important dialogue with the employees to facilitate their performance in meeting the mission of the organization, beginning dialogue with the community and the residents to move forward, which is part of our mission of the organization, better serve all constituents by taking appropriate action. And lastly, information and action plans to assist in the creation of a strategic plan for the organization. That's the end of my report unless any commissioner have any particular questions.
I have a question. You talked about, in DC, you met with HUD and they had the future plans of HUD that may impact us locally. Could you kind of share?
Well, one of the things that some people look at it as a positive or a negative, but HUD is looking at cutting budgets. Ben Carson, the HUD secretary, talked a lot about how he wanted to decrease the HUD's budget and the monies that the housing authorities are receiving from the federal government locally.
Good job, see head.
Yeah.
It's not your job.
Another thing that they talked about that will impact our clients is increasing rents. They feel if we increase rents, that our clients would get off our program. Now, that's one thing that Moving to Work is moving toward. By having a Moving to Work program, we encourage our clients to work along with have education, which will eventually make them self-sufficient, freeing up those dollars. And lastly, one of the biggest focus that they talked about is Envision Centers. Envision Centers is a program that they see to bring together all the community resources and partners to help move the organization and its clients forward. Some of that briefly is like working with the WorkNet, Illinois Network.
WorkNet, Illinois WorkNet.
Illinois WorkNet. All those community partners, UCC even, maybe a community partner in that avenue in order to bring our clients and our organization forward.
And when he talked about increasing the rent so that it does not create a homeless situation in this nation, he was talking about that in relationship to all of HUD facility moving to adopting the Move to Work initiative, where you increasing the education, you increasing the employability as well as the income that allow them to
get off the program and be self-sufficient. But the first point was just increasing the rents of the clients. You know, we want to bring in those wraparound services to have our clients be educated, get jobs, higher paying jobs, before they can move forward. Sometimes it takes a little longer, and that's why they have Moving to Work organizations.
Does it also give them incentive, like increasing their rent, that'll help them know that you need to pay rent, and so when they get out there on their own, they know they gotta be paying, not just living for nothing.
Yes.
So I think that's a good incentive to let people know that you need to pay more, so you can be ready when you get out there to move. They ain't gonna let you pay that little bit of rent.
Yeah.
You know, if you're able to pay it.
We know we have some clients that may have a disability or seniors that may be on limited income, and those weren't the individuals that they was focusing on. They was focusing on individuals that have the ability to increase income and get off the program.
Yeah.
What about the people that can't, though? I mean, I just read briefly in the paper today, and the negative side of that you already got people that says, hey, we're the lowest of the lowest, we're the poorest of the poorest, and they want to go up 5% on the rent. So how are we going to deal with that?
Well, each housing authority, if this law is passed, will have to deal with it differently at a local level, and that's one of the things they focused and talked about. But I can tell you one thing, it takes a while for laws like that to come in place, and I'm not sure if that's going to pass. I currently sit on as the Vice President of Housing for the Public Housing Authority Directors Association, and all the major industry groups in housing is working with HUD now to ensure that don't happen.
Yeah, just first I want to give some praise for our new executive director, David Northern. He suffered through a 4.5-hour meeting with me. Very few people are willing to do that. Also, Cindy suffered through that. But I am very impressed that I had a Urbana resident who is a homeless veteran who, for a bureaucratic reason, was not able to access a house that had been approved for moving in. He had to wait 2 weeks in homelessness, and Mr. Northern turned that around and he moved in the next day. That's the kind of action I'd like to see, and I'm very happy to have you here. Also, I brought to his attention that Hamilton on the Park has a lease violation with regard to their Urbana landlord-tenant ordinance, where they're charging more than 5%. It's something that we should generally be looking for, we should not be allowing exorbitant fees. And so Mr. Northern's looking into that now, and I look forward to working with the commissioners in the future to potentially limit fees based not only on the amount of rent at market rate, but actually the amount that they're paying. So in theory, someone paying $50 could now be paying a $50 fee, late fee, so double their rent in late fees. I think we should address that going forward. I did want to bring up that Thornberry and Sycamore, what is it, Providence at Thornberry and Providence at Sycamore, I brought up a couple of meetings ago. There are, you know, a total of 86 units open for our project-based voucher spaces. Just to give perspective, that would have covered every homeless family I've worked with in the last 4 months. Not to say that those would be the family's house, but that's just for a perspective. Like, that actually is all of the people who we work with could have had housing in the spaces that are vacant currently. Now, 90% from a business perspective is not bad, but when you have people who are actually unsheltered on the street, it really matters when you have empty units. And so I'd like to see us, you know, it's taken quite a while to open the wait list. It looks like, so that folks, the public knows wait lists are a point of contention in this community with the Housing Authority. It seems like they're never open, and it's very hard to get on them. But the wait lists for Providence at Thornberry and Providence at Sycamore are opening May 1st, correct?
Correct.
And I think going forward, whenever there's, we know that there's vacancies, and I know that it appears that staff has been working on our end for a while to address the fact that there was no wait list and there were vacancies. And I'd just like to see us maybe provide, you know, additional pressure so that it's not 4 months that we're waiting to move people onto a wait list and into housing, especially in the winter, especially with, you know, shelters at full capacity. Going forward, I'd like to really see our occupancy be as close to 100 as possible. And then I had a question when we get to the finances piece of where I know that we give out subsidies to specific landowners who receive those subsidies, and I don't see them reflected in the finances. And I'd like to generally have a sense of like which property managers are getting how much money in subsidies, and whether that could be either part of those financial reports or something that we get separately going
That's
forward.
protected information. We can't release publicly the locations of Section 8 properties.
Oh, but we can.
We can give a report of how much total HAP is paid, but not by individual property.
But not by property, but can we do it by management company?
David, we probably need to look into that.
We'll take a look at that,
Let us
and
take
if
a look
that's
at it.
possible.
There is there's some HUD things about what we can and cannot release related to Section 8 subsidies.
Okay, just because when you look at finances, if checks are going to specific businesses, typically you would see in the finances where they're going, but I hear that we wouldn't necessarily want to have identifying information about address.
Correct.
Yes, thank you.
I'll be brief. I would just like to say that I was fortunate enough to be on the committee that brought Mr. Northern to Housing Authority Champaign County, and I think that we're very fortunate to get a person of his high esteem. He's at the top of the list in his field. I would encourage you to look at the website. He's outstanding. He set Lake County, I think that's the second largest county in the state of Illinois, with over 1 million population. And I think he set them on the map. And he's an exemplary leader, visionary person. And the people I've come in contact with or called me about concerns of this, I said, give him a chance. You'll be very pleased with his ability to communicate with everyone, and he's already set an example. So we're very encouraged and very happy to have him on board. Thank you.
Cindy or Dave, either one of you. I thought last month we kind of talked about the vacancy at Thornberry and Sycamore, that they were not actual unoccupied apartments.
Well, if you look at the HCV report that's in your packet on page 80, it actually shows that as of March 31st, there were 29 vacant units. There were 18 at Thornberry and 11 at Sycamore. And I did follow up. Danielle, did you receive the information I sent this morning?
With
Yeah,
the written?
right,
Yeah,
right.
so that
Okay, so
gave
the
me a
issue-
sense that we've been working on
Right,
our end,
the-
but there were some issues on
Right.
their end.
In the issue, in November, they came to us and asked us to open the waiting list, and when we went to the waiting list, we found that there were almost 500 applicants on the waiting list. So obviously, we couldn't open the waiting list until they processed all of those applicants. So the issue has been that we've been working with them since November, actually, for them to basically contact all the applicants on the waiting list and be able to demonstrate to us and document in accordance with HUD requirements that in fact all of the applicants had been contacted in order and that there was a letter documenting whether there was no response or why they had not processed those applicants. They actually completed their last deadline on April the 13th, or their last applicant that they were processing on April the 13th. There's still a few, like maybe 8 or so applicants on there that we've asked them to process. So, and during that process, we conducted training for the property management companies on a couple of occasions. We now have the new position we filled for compliance specialist. That young lady is interacting with them. She was actually out there this week. And so we're working much closer with the private property management companies that are managing the properties where we provide subsidy. So I think going forward, that will work much better. But we have had some problems with this particular management company in managing things appropriately. And so we couldn't open the waiting list until we followed all of the guidelines that had to be followed, which is what I had tried to provide information on. So I think hopefully that will, we'll make sure that that doesn't happen again, but there was reasons why that had gone on, so. I just had a couple other real minor things I wanted to point out. Some of you may have seen on the news that Tolono had a village board meeting on Tuesday night, and they were not friendly to the rezoning process for the site that now we do not own that site, we have an option on it, and we actually have the contract written so that the current owner is really responsible for getting the rezoning. The meeting, because it went late, it ended and is going to be continued this coming Tuesday, and I'll be going with John. Poor John got beat up. But we're also going. The mayor is actually the village mayor is actually very supportive, and he has a couple of alternate sites, and John and I are actually going to Tolono tomorrow to look at some alternate sites. I'm a believer that we need to find sites that are appropriately zoned, so we're looking at some possible alternatives there. The St. Joe acquisition is still pending. Again, we put that on the owner, that they had to make sure that the special use permit could be transferred to us without any additional issues, and we're still waiting for them to do that. So that's kind of. So I just wanted to point out those two things. The other thing I wanted to point out is, one of the things we've been actively doing is to close out all of the audit issues related to the voucher program. And I want to say that we're very close. If you look on page 76 of your overall report, it gives you kind of a highlight. As of the end of March, we had 101 files left to audit. We are completing those, and the auditor will be finishing up on Monday. She'll be leaving. That's her last day here. And so all 100% of the files have been audited. The compliance specialist is in training with Candace, the consultant that's been here, to make sure that we go forward continuing to audit. So we've made a lot of progress on that, which has been a very good thing. The scanning activity continues, and we're also continue to make a lot of progress on that as well. And then the last thing is we have included for the first time property management reports. You did not have those in the past. They're on page 84 and 85. And what we've done is we've made the property managers, the asset managers, be responsible for the tenant accounts receivable. That used to be in finance. They're not out there dealing with the tenants and trying to collect the rents. So that is now on your property management report, and you'll see that's broken into our two separate portfolios, the RAD portfolio and what we call the affordable portfolio. And that's where you have the operational statistics are there. And as David mentioned, the occupancy, you'll actually see, for example, if you look at the RAD one on page 84, at Washington and Steer, we have 104 units at Washington and 108 at Steer, but we actually only have 89 at Washington that are available for occupancy and 95 at Steer, and that's because of the RAD construction that's still underway. So that's why those units, we really have 100% occupancy of the units that are available to occupy right now. The rest are under construction, and that's true of all those properties that under the RAD portfolio. And then where we do have a large vacancy is Maple Grove, which is the emergency family shelter. And that is in large part because the shelter was vacant for a while. The shelter is now full as of today. 4 of those vacant units have families from the shelter that are moving into them. The other issue that we have here is the statewide referral network. We have to, because this project was funded by a permanent supportive housing grant from IDA, everything has to go through the statewide referral network. So when a family moves into the shelter, regional planning immediately signs them up with statewide referral. We have had issues with the statewide referral network getting the families back referred to us in a timely manner. And we're not allowed to rent those units to anybody until we let them sit for 30 days and let the statewide referral network try to fill them up first. So David is going to be meeting with the statewide referral network. We communicate with them on an ongoing basis, but it's the frontline folks that are supposed to be doing the referrals, and so we've had some challenges there. But the shelter has 8 people in it now. All the shelter units are full, and 4 of them are getting ready to transfer to the transitional units. So anything you can do to help keep the shelter full would certainly be helpful.
You don't have to worry about that. I've
Yeah.
got families in desperate need who cannot get an emergency family shelter, have waited 2 months.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very dire situation.
Yeah, and those units have to be leased from families from the shelter. That's the way that program's designed, the way it was funded. We can't do anything different. So that's why if you see vacancies there, it's because we don't have people getting through the shelter or through the statewide referral network the way that they should. So I just wanted to highlight those few things.
I want to say a couple of things before you answer. As Cindy said, I have a really good relationship with IDA, and we've already started working on sitting down and talking about how we can improve that program and move forward. Lastly, our mission, growing and moving forward together is something that we really want to have here at the Housing Authority. We want to look at the transparency, the sharing of information, so encourage friends, family members, co-workers to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. That's where a lot of our information will be. That's the easiest way to get information out, and we've started all those various media outlets. And so please encourage individuals in order to like that, follow it, or whatever you do for that particular medium. And lastly, I'm happy to be here also, just like you guys are happy to have me here. It's a great community, and we have a great team that's been doing a great job. And we may fine-tune a few things, but we're going to do exactly what our mission say, grow and move forward together. Thank you.
Okay. Any other commission have anything to about?
I would just like to say we really welcome you here, David. I'm gonna just be honest. I investigated you before you came. They told me so much stuff about you, it blew me away.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Okay, all right.
Good stuff. So, people can say whatever they want to say. Like I said, I usually look into people before I do what I do, and you had a lot of people, and I won't say people that even came from this housing authority that put you before them, and that's all I'm going to say about that one.
Okay. Next is our financial report by Max.
All right, the first thing here is the cash disbursements for the month of March. You'll see a total amount of $324,327.59. Following is the detail of that. I just want to highlight a few non-routine payments over $10,000, kind of using that as a threshold. The first is on page 91. You'll see an amount for Brooks Jeffrey Marketing for $11,190. That was the second payment for building our new website. They were the ones involved in putting that together. On page 95, you'll see an amount to the University of Illinois at the bottom of the page, $13,504.26. That was their moving to work evaluation for the month of January. On pages 96 and continued on 97, top of 97 shows the total for Orkin for $10,810. That was bed bug treatment that was done mostly at Steer Place. They've been doing a lot of work as a result of trying to get things eradicated with the moves. So trying to get some other processes in place that are more extensive, but also a little bit more expensive as well. So that most of that was to steer and a little bit to skeleton place. On page 98, you'll see an amount for Building Systems of Illinois for $52,128.90. That was for the continued RAD conversion rehab work done at the properties, mostly at Washington Square, Steer Place, and Columbia. And on page 100, and then continued on 101, is University of Illinois, $13,514.43 for moving to work evaluation work for the month of February. And then on page 102, you'll see in the middle of the page Malat Morse Leonati for $15,390. Most of that, $12,690 of that, was for architectural services for the new office on North Market to do the renovation and the addition needed. And then there's also a feasibility study for the property that we're trying to purchase in St. Joseph. And then the last item is on 103, bottom 103, for Cindy Herrera and Associates, $50,268. And that was for January and February for her work as the interim executive director, as well as the person who is doing through her as the interim housing choice voucher director, and also the HCV consultant who was doing the file audit. So that was for January and February, those amounts. Any questions on the check listing? Okay. So next is the first quarter of 2018 budget to actual report. I know we're going on 3 hours here in this meeting, so I'll try to balance of being highlighting some of the line items while also not overdoing it. So I'll let you kind of fill in if you have any questions. I will be happy to field any questions you have on this, especially since this is the first time that we're presenting something like this.
I had a question.
Sure.
And the question was in regards to, I think, administrative expense and maintenance expense.
Sure, and I'll actually highlight both of those as I go through, so thank you for asking that.
What I was looking at, y'all deal with federal fiscal year, right? This being the second
Calendar year.
Calendar year.
Calendar year, January to
This being the
December.
second quarter of your calendar year, you're halfway through your
Oh, this is for first quarter only.
Oh, first quarter.
January,
Yeah.
February, March.
Yeah, we're calendar year.
We're
I take
calendar
first in
year.
my budget.
And if you remember, when we did the budget session,
Mm-hmm.
the board had asked to see financial statements for budget to actual, because you never had those in the past. So this is the first time we're presenting them to you, and we've put them in the format that we presented the budget in. So hopefully they'll be kind of easy to follow.
Okay. First
So go
quarter,
ahead,
you
Matt.
don't have a problem.
Go ahead, Matt.
If it was your third quarter, you have a significant problem.
Sure, and there's always some sort of outlying, situations that result, so I'll explain those. Just the format of it. The first 3 pages is an agency-wide budget to actual. So you'll see some of our main programs or departments, central office, housing choice voucher, moving to work. Everything related to our properties rolls up into a property management column, which on the next couple of reports, you'll see a RAD portfolio, budget to actual, kind of following the format of the property management reporting, broken that out into the RAD portfolio, so those 5 properties, and then an affordable portfolio, which contains the rest of our properties. And then those roll into the property management. So I'll highlight some of the things that don't specifically relate to the property management on the agency-wide budget, and when we get into the properties, I'll highlight things that are more directly related to income expenses at the property level. So the first thing I want to point out in the agency-wide budget to actual is on HAP funding. So you'll see in the income section a line for HAP funding, where the total is about $2.5 million and the budget was 3.2. So we have a variance there where we're below budget in terms of the income there. We budget based on our anticipated eligibility and based on HUD's cash management policies. They don't necessarily give us everything that we're eligible for. They disperse it based on the perceived need for our voucher utilization, expenses that we submit to them for moving to work related expenses. So the revenue is actually recognized just based on the disbursements. We can't recognize it on the eligibility. So that's why there is a disparity there. We did on the HUD funding line, two down. We did break out those revenue amounts, that funding, $268,532. There's no budget item for that, but we did break it out because it is non-MTW HAP funding, so funding that we're receiving for our RAD vouchers and for our VASH and another non-MTW tenant protection 23-unit property. So I did break that out separately, even though it technically is still HAP funding. So I also wanted to highlight under central office, you'll see other income, $40,000. That's just pass-through income. The central office covers expenses that relate to Oakwood Trace and the Maple Grove Manor property. So it pays those and then bills those properties and then recognizes that income. So it's a wash in terms of the income and expenses, but just so you know what that income is. On the expenses, under payroll expense, you'll see, for example, for management payroll, the total actual is $197,500, where the budget is $335,000. So we're under budget by $138,000 for the first quarter. Most of that relates to we didn't have an executive director in place during that time. We didn't. There's a number of positions that we have filled through temp workers that normally would be filled by actual staff that would be recorded on that management payroll line. And then also some positions that we had budgeted for and we haven't filled those yet or may not fill those. So, and that corresponds to the other administrative expense that I think Commissioner Lewis, you were probably wanted to highlight. Most of that is the temp expenses, either for temp employees who are in positions that we have that will eventually be filled, or the interim executive director, all the expenses through that come through Cindy Herrera and Associates. Those positions are recorded on the other administrative expense as opposed to a payroll line. So just to kind of highlight the variances there, kind of that explains what those variances are. Also I want to jump over to page 106, so the next page, maintenance expense. Probably the biggest item, again, Commissioner Lewis was probably pointing to, is supplies. So you'll see a total supplies amount of $65,438, and the budget is only $7,442. Most of that is, in February, we donate a lot of obsolete inventory, $36,000 worth of obsolete inventory that's been sitting, a lot of it's been sitting at the maintenance building for who knows how long. So it had to come off the books, and when it comes off the books, it gets expensed as a supply, and so all that money gets recognized in the supplies expense line. So that's that wasn't something that we were necessarily budgeting for in the actual usage of supplies, so it's kind of an outlying situation. We also had a $10,000 expense, a steer for blinds to replace all the blinds in all the units of the property. So that was another big expense we didn't necessarily foresee that was part of the renovation, the RAD rehab, but was covered under the property maintenance expense supply line. And just to go to the bottom, I guess to the bottom line, on page 107, we do have cash flow after debt service. 2 lines up from that, we do have the net operating income, and then there's some places that do have debt service for a mortgage. You'll see that later on the other properties, but you'll see that there is a surplus in everything except for the moving to work, and that is on purpose. Moving to work doesn't have any income that flows through it specifically. We do have the moving to work block grant where it's the HAP funding, operating subsidy, capital funds that come in. And so the funding that comes in through the Housing Choice Voucher Program as HAP funding is what we utilize at the moving to work level to cover those expenses. So basically we transfer those funds over to cover the deficit. Any questions on that agency-wide portion?
Any questions?
And I'll just quickly highlight on the RAD portfolio. Again, this is all of our properties that have undergone the RAD conversion. The net rental income, you'll see there, $459,447 total compared to $484,000. Again, that's related to units that have been taken offline during the RAD renovations. On page 109, you'll see an amount for pest control, or you'll see the total for actual pest control, $20,974 versus $9,625. That was a lot of pest control that was done at Steer and Washington in the course of moving units with the RAD renovations and doing more rather than just spraying, using, I think, used dogs as well. Is that those properties?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Use doggies.
So more advanced techniques to hopefully eradicate what has been and usually is a lingering issue in a lot of housing authorities. On the affordable portfolio budget, so on pages 110 and 111, we kind of touched on the vacancy loss. You'll see the big vacancy loss amount for Maple Grove that was related to those properties that we couldn't fill as a result of limitations with the shelter transition and the referral network. Other income for scattered sites and Skelton, they still receive public housing operating subsidy. So we didn't necessarily factor that into our budget because we weren't sure at what point the RAD transition would take place. So we still have public housing operating subsidy that we'll be receiving for those properties for all of 2018. So that just comes in as another income. And in the same vein, we didn't necessarily budget on the property management fee side because, again, we didn't know how long these properties would be in place before they closed as part of the RAD. And so on the expense side, you'll see fees, property management fees, $31,302, which is higher than the $19,283 budgeted, and that was related to the Skelton and scattered sites management fees that it pays to the central office for management and bookkeeping fees. Any questions?
Yeah, you want to do my income tax?
I don't do taxes.
That's a whole different world.
Any question to Matt?
And again, we're open to what's most helpful for the board in terms of presentation. You can only squeeze so many numbers on a spreadsheet before it's dizzying and it's diminishing returns. So, we'd welcome any feedback in our department in terms of how to make this more helpful, beneficial for the board.
I just want to say great job to the finance department because they've not done this before. And when we started this process, we didn't even have a budget module. So they not only got the budget module up and going and implemented, but they also were able to produce these financial statements.
Typically, we've done a
Good
budget,
job.
we've done the actual, we just haven't had anything to incorporate, and we've kind of done it on our own in Excel, and it's not been pleasant. So it's good to try to be able to incorporate that in our software provider is kind of slowly coming along in terms of being able to accommodate our needs. So
I did have one quick question. You do an annual budget every year, correct?
Correct.
And then you get the quarterly budget just by dividing it by 4. How do you get to the quarterly budget?
Well, so the ones that we keep track in our in our software system, it's less nuanced, and so a lot of it's divided by 12.
Per month, okay.
Yeah, a couple of them that we actually bring the budget in from another system, Oakwood Trace and Maple Grove Manor in particular. We do a little bit more of a nuanced budget to accommodate, higher snow removal costs in the winter months and, higher gas, costs in those months as well. So, yeah, that's something that we're hoping that our software provider can accommodate for, again, to really recognize what are the actual expenses and the timing of those expenses as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all the information. It's good to have, and we need to keep abreast of where we're doing good and where we're not doing so good. And I think it's very appropriate. Like you said, we don't have to spend, as long as we have the information before us, we can review it at our leisure, and then get back to you if we have any questions.
Sure.
But I appreciate all the information.
Welcome.
Better to have more than not enough.
Right.
Okay. And we received the cash disbursement and the individual checklists in advance. Anybody have any questions in that regard? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the cash disbursement and detailed check report and the budget to actual financial statement for first quarter 2018.
So move. Second.
Roll call?
Chairman Lewis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rose.
Yes.
Commissioner Walker,
Yes.
and Commissioner Henry.
Yes.
Next, public comment on non-agenda item.
No public left.
Being none.
I think we see the MO of the new CEO.
At this time, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move. Second.
Roll call.
Chairman Lewis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rose.
Yes.
Commissioner Walker,
Yes.
and Commissioner Henry.
Yes.
You are hereby adjourned.